Well, hello again. I hope you're all ready and excited to dive into the wondrous, wondrous mysteries of each individual output on the Kemper because ever since I was a tiny little baby back in the 1830s, I have had this nagging feeling as if there is a difference in the sound quality that comes out of each respective output on the Kemper. And it's difficult to really discern those things if you've got volume differences, and each output is likely and I believe I've even read something about this on the Kemper forums, likely a different impedance meant for different things, but all of that only really boils down to which one sounds the best for you with your rig. And we're dealing with what are probably at least generally standardized values when it comes to what is a high Z input, what is a line level input, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't think that there's a whole lot of um, variance, let's say, in terms of people's rigs. I think what we can find out through doing some testing is what's going to likely sound the best, um, or if there is any difference at all. I'm leaning towards there is a difference. Lots of people find the experience of plugging a set of headphones into the headphone jack into the front of the Kemper to be the best sonic experience you get with it. I agree with that. That was the first thing I noticed. I went, whoa. Like, I actually owned mine for quite a while before trying out the headphone jack, and I would just play here in my studio. And then I plugged in. I was like, whoa, it sounds even better. Because I love the Kemper, and I want that to be clear. I love the Kemper to death. I really, really do. I use it all the time. As I said in my last video, I used to own a Fender Deluxe Reverb, and I sold it and traded basically for a different guitar. And so I love the Kemper. I believe in it, But I want to get down to the bottom of if there are differences and what they are and how I can best use them for the results that I want to get in the studio. So I have gone absolutely bonkers and decided to record simultaneously out of, I believe, every output. Let's see if I missed any. These are certainly the ones that I use the most. So I took a TRS cable out of the headphone jack and then into a little splitter and went into the high Z inputs of my Black Lion B12A quad, which is an API style preamp, and then the other one is into the high Z, or it just calls it instrument input of my RME 802 Fireface. And both of those I messed around to just get what I felt like was a reasonable amount of gain from the preamps, which I would say like is roughly halfway on both of them. I'm not necessarily trying to overtly color the sound, but maybe detect if there are any differences that are notable between those. But being that is, as far as I know, the only stereo TRS jack on the unit, I decided it would be cool to take that out and split it to two different sources since I've got them. And then, of course, we have main, left, and right. There is no reason for me to have done a left and right other than the fact that I just did. And I figured I could see if there are differences between analog channels, which, spoiler alert, there are, even if it's the same signal. I don't know precisely why that is, other than just because, well, it's analog, bro. So I don't really know, but they're very small, and it's nothing to worry about. It's not a problem. It's just the nature of it. because if you scroll down to the SPDIF stuff and look at those, they are exactly the same. I haven't done a null test on those. I'm actually interested to do that. We'll do it. But I just looked at them on the old vector scope here and saw that they were a much tighter mono signal than the main left and right. And of course, you got the good old monitor and direct out, which I am having sneaking suspicions are the worst sounding outputs, at least when plugged into a line level input. Someone might say, well, that's the monitor output. It's not meant for a line input. And that might be true. I would like to know if that is the case, because there is a video Kemper put out on YouTube where they suggest configuring your outputs as a delay reverb wet on your main left and right, and then using the monitor out as your stack output, or if you wanted to, you could do the mod output as well. And like, if that's only meant to go to a monitor, then what am I supposed to plug that into, and what monitor do they mean? Like a stage monitor, I would assume, or a cab. Does it need a load? I'm just like, that seems like a lazy answer. So I'd like to know what the truth about that is. Same with the direct output. It was told to me by a guy on the Kemper Facebook group, which I'm a part of, and I do want to point out that he did seem to know a little bit about this stuff, and he was not at all like in any way like ignorant of this stuff. But what he gave me was a little bit more of like layman's terms of like, well, the direct out sounds that way because it's for direct out. It's like a DI output. But I am also unsatisfied with that answer, because Kemper gives you the option to change what type of signal you're sending out of each one. I can do get studio, get analog, and then the stack, or all of these numbers of things. And so if I like wasn't supposed to do that, then I would think that they would keep me from doing that. So again, that's a bit where I'm not fully satisfied with the answer, and that's no like insult against that gentleman, because he was just trying to help and explain stuff, and he was very nice, and so I don't have any problem there. I just wanted to dive in a little more and see what kind of kooky information we could derive from me recording 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 channels of Kemper all at the same time. All dry stack recordings, and all of them sound pretty much the same. Let's get that out of the way right off the bat. I didn't listen to any of those and go, ugh. There were some volume differences, which I found to be interesting, because in the output menu of the Kemper, you can control all of the output levels independently, and I made sure to set all of them to 0 dB except for the headphones. All right. Except for the headphones volume, which I'm actually at -12 because I found there to be ample gain on that running into a preamp, which likely has a lot to do with it running into a preamp and not just into a line level input. So I think that is enough of an intro. Sorry, I'm fixing this. I don't like this stand very much. It does that quite often and is very annoying. But yeah, so without further ado, let's look at each one of these individual tracks. And I'd also like to point out that I've loaded ProQ3 on each of them, all with freeze mode activated. That's not the final signal. I think it doesn't like to keep this yeah, it does away with it relatively quickly, which is kind of annoying. I wish that it would keep that stuff up so that I could look at it. I actually ran the whole audio tracks through all this stuff in hopes that it would actually freeze the thing and me be able to look at each one independently, one after the other, and compare them. And unfortunately, it just makes it go away, and it makes me very sad. So I can still look at them. We'll just have to look at them kind of individually with different sections of what I recorded. And I can even run stuff through with it muted, which is fine. So I've got the highest resolution and speed, and I'm wondering if the speed, there's no like don't make it go away option, so I think we're doing the best we can. I did discover the tilt feature, very cool. Won't get into that right now. So yeah, let's listen to each one of these tracks and hear what the differences are, if any, and just kind of go through it. That's what we're here to do. So starting out with, I would say, the main output, and we're just going to do these in mono at first to make things fair, and then we will look at the stereo pairs on the vector scope and see what's what there as well. And I'd like to point out too that I did my best to volume match all of these. Some of them, like I said, were a little bit different in volume. All of them seemed to be in phase as far as I could tell, except for the Spidiff ones, which were behind just a little bit. So I just scooched them forward. You can also see that the direct output, despite me coming in and adding 3.8 dB of gain to volume match, and I even like stereo spectrum matched it against something else to get it to be center. The waveform's a little smaller. Don't know what that's about. I wouldn't worry too much about it just yet. So now that that stuff is out of the way, like I said, let's check out the main output and see what it sounds like. Okay, so those are chuggy, lots of palm muted, gained up chords, and I started there for one, that was kind of the mood I was in, and for another thing, I felt like when I was doing stuff like that with the palm mutes and whatnot, I could really get a feel for the discrepancies I was at least believing that I was hearing between yesterday, the monitor output, and I think what was the direct output, I can't remember. I still have those tracks in this session as well, but yeah, I was definitely hearing a difference between the monitor output and the other one, which I think was the direct output. I was finding the direct output to sound a lot better and the monitor output to sound like it had a decreased transient, like a decreased ability to deal with transient, like dynamic range, and that was possibly also just maybe a bit of a like sub frequency cutoff. It's hard to really explain without, because I'm just coming at this as like I'm hearing something different, and then the question becomes, what are you hearing different? And I'm aware that I can really zoom in and hyperfixate on things and probably hear things that aren't there. And I'm really doing my best not to do that and not like nitpick something to death. There just is a noticeable difference that I found yesterday and before between the monitor outputs and some other things. So anyways, moving on. That was the main output. I'm going to select a nice little loop section. And I'm just going to use these chords first off so that I can compare. Let's go to the monitor now. Oh, sorry for the panning. Let's unpan them. One more time, starting with the main. I'm going to use a shorter loop actually now. I didn't record this to a click, so forgive me. I'm not certain that I'm hearing much of a difference. It is a little difficult because I have to hit more than one button to switch over. I can't just switch real quickly. It might be helpful to just select an even shorter loop. See, when I do that, I think that I can hear a difference in the low end, in the way that the chug and sort of the like girth of the cabinet is supposed to feel. Let's take a main output and the monitor output and pan them opposite and see what we get. Let's do a longer loop now. So, as you can see, there's a little bit of a difference between the two. And it seems like it's in this space between palm muting and not or something. Now, is it any more of a difference than what we get between just the two main analog channels? A lot more. It's a lot different. Granted, these are supposed to be literally the same signal, but I'm supposed to also be sending the same signal out of this output. So, again, this is not like a gotcha, like, what's going on, Kemper? Like, you lied to me. It's not at all like that. I just want to understand the outputs more efficiently and proficiently, because I do feel as if like they are all supposed to be the same, roughly speaking, and they don't seem like they are. So, yeah. Again, if I take, one main and the monitor and look again. Particularly, that's a hard word to say, whenever I'm doing that riff. There's virtually no difference between the two mains, which is great. That's what you want to see. But between a main and the monitor output, they're quite different for what's supposed to be, exactly the same. And it's not like it's pulling to one side, like there's a large volume discrepancy. I think I did have to, so the monitor's not changed. No, those are actually both at 0 dB gain, 0 dB out of the Kemper. Are they adjusted here? No. And look, you can see, interestingly, the main here is reading at peak minus 5.2, and then the monitor is reading at peak minus 0.2. I don't know what that's about. I don't always trust these, or I should trust them. I should say that I don't always understand exactly what they're saying and how they're getting to that number. But you can see that they're within 0.3 dB of one another. So even if I were to go, okay, well, let's even those out, and I'm going to bring this one down minus 0.3. If anything, you do start to see it pull to the left. So that's odd that it is reading that way on the peaks, but nonetheless, there's a pretty big difference between the two. What if I do the monitor and the direct out? So monitor is going to the left now, direct out to the right. Clear that there's a volume difference right there. So let me account for that. The direct out's a little bit loud. That looks really close. So that's about as close as I can get those. And as you can see, again, they're quite different. Different enough to not be mono, Oh, my bad. I didn't pan that one all the way. That's probably what was the issue with the volume. Yeah, let me fix that now. I thought I had this one right. So it was at plus 3.8. So let me put it back there and see if I was. Yeah, that's even more of a difference between the monitor and the direct out than there was with the monitor and one of the main outs. So that's crazy. A monitor out and one side of the main out is at least closer using this form of measurement in terms of the stereo field than it is similar to the direct out. So those are quite different. So I suppose if you want a thicker, less mono signal, use the monitor out and the direct out as like a stereo input, and there you go. SPDIF is probably the least exciting, and I'll get back to the direct comparisons by ear. Well, actually, yeah, before I move on, I suppose I should revisit, and we will get to the headphone one. Don't you worry. Let me revisit the monitor versus direct output fiasco that I was on yesterday at the time of recording this. Let's hear the monitor. Let's middle those out. This might be a fun time to start looking at ProQ and comparing those two things. So we will open up the monitor on the left, and then here's the direct out one on the right. And so far, well, actually those look quite different in the low end, but let's play some audio through it and see what we get. Those are way different. Look at the top end here versus here, and then look at the bottom end. Look at this weird sub boost in the monitor one versus this roll off on the direct out. Besides that, most things are fairly, the hump there is different. That could be just a difference in what audio I've run through it, so I want to figure out how I can reset this. Whoops, not that way. So I suppose if I just unclick and re-click freeze, right? And to be completely fair, I'll hit freeze again, and then, just so we're hitting it at the same time. Immediately there's this enormous, this is like 10 hertz down to however, you can't measure 0 hertz because that would be nothing, but like it's down there. Let me get rid of this little menu, and much more similar in the top end. There's a little bit of discrepancy in the very tippy top. A little more of that weird 22.5 thing, which I'm suspicious is some sort of like 44.1 aliasing artifact. I'm not really sure. Anyways, very similar despite, except for like top and bottom, really. Like I'm seeing these peaks and valleys hit pretty much the same place on both. The weird thing is just that low end, and then of course what we saw a minute ago with the high end. Let's see if we can still get that if we play more audio through it. Those look as close to identical as humanly possible. The only difference I'm seeing is the most obvious one is the low end. Very strange. Really doesn't matter except for possibly in the like realm of headroom. You definitely want to make sure that you high pass tracks that you're doing out of the monitor out. And I mean, normally that's a thing anyways that you're going to want to do, but like especially important if you've got stuff down here at 10 hertz, you know, just blah, blah, blah. That's really going to build up over time. Or it's possible for it to, you know, it's just something to be mindful of. The rest looks very similar. Let's A-B them and see what we hear. And I'm going to go to that portion. And let's go ahead and put this on a playlist so I can just toggle back and forth. They are, of course, very similar. Of course, they are very similar. They are so similar. The majority of them is the exact same, but unlike the graphs represent, where there's this interesting little rise in the low end of the monitor output, which I'm going to go ahead and say that that's negligible because I don't have monitors that go down to, 10 hertz or whatever this is, and most likely neither do you, and it's just not that big of a thing. Like, I'm hesitant to say this for risk of just sounding like a crazy person or like a dude on Gear Space going, no, it's worth it to spend $65,000 on your converters because there's an audible difference, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, bro, when was the last time you actually put a song out? So I do get that. Let's go ahead and get that, out of the way. But I feel like I'm hearing a difference, and it's more than a feeling. More than a feeling. Hope I don't get copyright. That wasn't that good. I'll do what I did yesterday where I clicked it a whole bunch of times and keep my eyes shut. And then I'll move on because I already covered this in the last video. Okay. That's the direct out. See? I told you. There's a difference. That's crazy. But part of me is relieved that I'm not just a crazy person, that I can immediately identify the difference. The direct out, it's not brighter, but it has more shine and realism to it. I hate using terms like that because it's so subjective. I think there's a higher dynamic range coming out of the direct output. And I think that the monitor output feels like an afterthought that's like, well, if you need this, here it is. This is really a secondary thing. People aren't going to be doing any serious, recording or anything like that. They're not going to be miking up the monitor output. They just want it so that they have a little bit of, air moving with them on stage, or they can hear themselves well enough. Like, what's 5% difference, to me, it's a lot. It's the reason why we buy external preamps and we upgrade from our Focusrite Scarletts and all that. It's so that we can make damn good recordings. And so it's disappointing to me whenever there's a video from Kemper telling you to use your main left and right outputs for your delay and reverbs, and then to use your monitor as the stack output, which is just the guitar amp dry output. Like, that's not what I want to do if it sounds audibly different from another output. So, moving on. Let's hear what the Spitifs are doing. Let's go ahead and close out of these. Fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. And the fact that I could do that 2 days in a row, and today feeling a little bit more maybe just courageous and deciding to I'm pretty sure this is a direct out, make a quick decision based off of what I'm hearing. I identified it in like half a second of hearing it, really. So, and that's not to bolster me up. It's just like, it is noticeable. So, anyways, moving on from that, Spitifs, they sound like this. They sound great. I already showed you what the difference was between left and right. It's nothing, so that's great. They're very consistent. They ought to be. They're digital. That's definitely something that you can do if you're into that. And I might just be after this video. We'll see. Let's see what happens when we look at them on the analyzer. I hear clicks and pops, okay? This is what's kept me from using the SPDIF out. I have everything set to 48K. I have the Kemper set to 48K. I have the RME set to 48K. I'll double check it live right now. 48K. It's locked in because I have Pro Tools open. Clock source is set to internal. I have at times set that to AES, which is what the Kemper is plugged into with via a SPDIF cable, and AES is the protocol. I don't really remember, whatever. But someone might have told me to set it to that before, and maybe it wasn't causing clicks and pops, but what it was causing is that whenever I would turn the Kemper on, it would like destroy the computer's ability to make any audio sounds. It would be like bit crushed almost. It was very strange. So it was a huge pain and just annoying. And like other times it would start, if I turned that on in the middle of a session, even if the session was set to 48K, which is all I ever record at, it would change the playback speed and the behavior of Pro Tools to be at half speed, which is really cool, and I don't know why. So not immediately impressed with that. Is that an interface thing? Is it a Kemper thing? Who knows? But anyways, not going to be relying on that because I just can't. I can't have clicks and pops in my recordings. It's not going to happen. It does look like the low end is a little bit different. Let's compare that to our other contender, which is the direct out. Here we go. I apologize. I had the wrong one open. I've confused myself. Yeah, that was SPDIF left. SPDIF right is what I want. Sorry about that. Here we go. Now we can compare. Those look virtually identical in the bulk of the signal, but it's worth noting that there's a little bit of a, I don't know if you want to call it a boost or extension. It's simply a slower roll off at this very last roll off. This is the direct out versus the SPDIF. So will the SPDIF be brighter? Will it have more air? Is it reproducing the signal more faithfully? I don't know. But I do know that for starters, I can't use it if there's clicks and pops. And I also, like I said, can't immediately just blame the Kemper for that. It's just an issue I'm having that, I don't know, but it's annoying, and so I can't use it at the moment. I can try setting the clock source to be the Kemper, but that seems weird. Yeah, so I don't know. But it sounds fine other than clicks and pops. And maybe that's like a, I know that there's a, ignore errors during playback record. No. Hardware buffer size is very high, so there shouldn't be any sort of, I usually just set this to normal. I'm not sure why it's set to whatever it was, but yeah. So that's kind of, yeah, right off the bat, there's just clicks and pops. Can't do that. So, yucky. Shame on you, SPDIF. I don't know what's going on. It's a bummer. Can't really just what am I going to do? Think that I know better than someone who's sold like 1 million, probably way more Kempers? I don't. I just know that I'm experiencing an issue, which is annoying. Let's go to the headphone output. That's the one that on the Facebook forum somebody asked, hey, what happens if you record from your headphone output straight to your interface, since everybody agrees the headphone output sounds the best? And I said, hold my lukewarm latte and watch this, because this is what it sounds like. Immediately, subjectively, to my ears, that sounds a little, for lack of a better term, maybe fizzy. So, like in that 3 to 6K range, there seems to be more excitement going on. Good or bad, it just tends to be. Let's see what the difference is. Oh, actually, before we look at the difference, so that was into the Black Lion Audio high Z input. Again, that's an API clone. I use that currently primarily for kick, snare, and overheads. I also use it as a DI quite often, and when recording bass, I used to use it as like a big fuzzy kind of thing. Here lately, I have been doing more of a clean thing with the output gain cranked and then the input gain just up to where it needs to be to get a healthy signal. So much more of a clean thing. And that's what I opted for with this as well. I've got the output on full, and then the input gain like less than halfway, just in order to get a healthy and similar signal to the rest of this stuff. So like that, I've got the RME instrument input set just under halfway. I know that those are arbitrary measurements, but I just did it like eyeballing the meters and stuff and trying to get them similar. I believe I did a stereo test between these two already, but we'll see. So this is what the RME sounds like. Sounds good. Again, I sense more of a fizzy and just more going on in that high range. So it goes to show you that it seems like there is more of a difference between the Kemper's outputs than there is what I plug those outputs into. Because if I can plug in a single, headphone out into two completely different high Z inputs from completely different manufacturers, RME and Black Lion, not to mention the fact that the RME is like a typically very, very clean and clinical sound, as opposed to the Black Lion, which is modeled after an API style preamp and is capable of much more like transformer saturation, both on the input and output. There's something to be said for that. So part of that tells me that my rig is not introducing these weird discrepancies. As far as I can tell, I'm very familiar with my rig, and as far as I can tell, unless I have like malfunctioning hardware, which I use every day, and I don't think I do, there are some big differences. And specifically tone-wise, let's come full circle and listen to this headphone output and then the main output afterwards. Let's see if we're crazy. Let's just listen to that much. Now let's volume match, because this is different. But before we do so, let's hear these in stereo so I can also balance them. So these looks like equal. The left one is ever so slightly more, it's just louder. That's pretty dang close. So now that we've got both of those gain matched, go ahead and bring these up by like half a dB, and then listen back to back. Still a little quiet. Still a little quiet, I think. And of course I could do this with the faders as well, but I just want to do it this way. Sue me. Don't, please. I don't have any money. Whoops, sorry. That sounds very similar. In fact, we could also do this. I don't know why I didn't think about this before. Probably just because they're so presumably different, but we'll see. Yeah, that's pretty equal. Okay, so tonal differences. Are there any? Sorry, guys. Seems like the headphone out is a little fizzier and maybe less dynamic. I gotta admit, between those two, I'm not hearing a significant difference. I could speculate on a difference that I hear, but it is that small. It's nothing compared to the immediate difference I hear between the monitor and direct. So I'm going to go ahead and say that you're not any better off plugging plugging a TRS out of the headphone and then coming out. I mean, unless you want to split it like I did, that could be handy because, again, that is a TRS stereo output, that headphone jack. So it could be handy. Curious, what is the difference, if any, because that was the RME instrument input. What is the difference, if any, between one of the main outputs and the Black Lion Audio DI? Is there a difference? I don't know. Let's find out. Just then, my eyes looked to see if I had actually clicked. So initial thoughts and feelings are there's not a significant difference. And my initial thought of, oh, cool, I could plug it into the front end of my Black Lion Audio and, like, get some vibe, get some saturation, whatever. Like, am I? Meh. I mean, I could turn up the input gain a little bit more and try to get something. Do I want to? I could try it, but not immediately any really much anything. So let's listen to a different part. I have so much. Let's go to a completely different spot. Let's hear some. Here we go. Fuzzy high chords. Let's try some of that. Let's see what we get. Not hearing a difference. Let's just listen to one of these parts where there's a little bit of a palm mute kind of bass thing going on. There is a little more going on with the Black Lion on that bass part. Or is there? I I don't know that there is, to be honest. We can compare. Yeah, we are on that. Let's compare charts. Charts. That's where we're getting really. Yeah. Oops. So that's the main left, and then we have whatever I said this was, the Blackline audio. And we can. Oh, I'm a silly goober, aren't I? 1 second. That's what I wanted. Go ahead and mute that. Okay. Love this. It's so fun. That's what I needed. Okay. All in the name of pseudoscience, everyone. So, I mean, this is kind of confirming what I was already feeling, or I shouldn't say that, hearing. There's no audible difference whatsoever. And granted, this is also this is FabFilter. You know, it's maybe not the greatest frequency analyzer of all time. I think it's pretty good and it's close enough, but nothing's gonna be perfect. So if I really want to be like, oh, there's differences, it's like I can probably find one. Yeah, there's a part right up there where it's slightly different. We get a slightly different readout. Does that mean anything? Dude, I don't know. You know, it'd be interesting because I think that I'm hearing something in the low end that's kind of a intermittent transient type thing. Let's turn freeze off. Let me turn the speed down as well because it's just overwhelming. See what fast looks like. And another thing I could do is actually just take these and overlay them. Yeah, main right. Interesting to see the difference in the top end. That's so fun to listen to. There is I guess I would call it significant difference in the top end, around like 15K, in the headphone out versus the main out. So we did discover that. Let's listen to more of the musical part and less of the insanity part. These are behaving very similarly, and at whatever resolution we're looking at them, there's a little bit difference. 15K and above, which a lot of people, man, on guitars, they like cut that out anyways. So does that matter? I don't know. Get it right at the source kind of thing. Like, okay, maybe you like using the headphone out for that. There's like a tiny. There are some differences down here in the sub bass. At least in terms of the measurement that I'm seeing. Like, I did say that I thought that there was a little bit difference in the sort of transient response of the bass, like palm mute chug type stuff, and that I liked what the Black Lion did a little bit more. Like, there was just a tiny bit more like girth to it. But again, is it like worth spending an hour long discussing on YouTube? I don't know. But I got to learn by doing. And speaking of which, like, that's kind of the end. What would be interesting, like, which one sounds best? Not the monitor output. Probably the main out, which is like what you want to see. That's what I was hoping for. The headphone out sounds similarly good. The only problem is that you've got the decreased flexibility of the headphone out, as far as I know, only being able to be the main, like main output of the Kemper. So in this case, I just had to disable any effects that I might have had because it's not assignable as far as I know. I'm not seeing any sort of assignability. I could be wrong, but I'm like 90% sure that you can't choose what the headphone output gets. I think it's always the master. So ease of use, main outs. Nice flexible wet dry rig. What would I do? Probably what I did the other day at my parents' house, which was using the direct output for the stack and then using main out left and right for just a wet delay reverb thing. That's what I would do. Last thing I want to do before we wrap up, because we're approaching an hour, and I personally live for this kind of stuff. I love it. It's very interesting to me, and it matters to me so that I can move forward with confidence when I'm making my recordings. Will anyone ever notice? I mean, as just like a layman, like a listener that's just hearing the music, I doubt it. I honestly doubt it. But just because records have been made with everything. I mean, if you think about the quality of like tape, or let's say the quality of vinyl, like vinyl wasn't able to like play back nearly the bandwidth, the frequency spectrum that modern systems are, because it would jump the needle out of the grooves in the record. So I mean, quality wise, we're light years ahead of anything we've had before our time, you know, like let's say 20 years of what we're in now, and then before that, like you get what I'm saying. Sorry. I do find this whole overlay situation to be useful, and I'd like to compare, let's say, the headphone out with our beloved monitor out that we love so much. Let's see what those look like overlaid upon each other. At the moment, we're listening to the headphone out BLA version. And the red is the monitor, and the gray is the headphone out. There's a lot of difference. Now, is that reading out at a faster rate because I have it set differently? Let's see. Because if this is set to ultra, or sorry, very fast, how about we set them both back to very fast and see what happens? Maybe that's what was happening with the other one. That could be it, right? I think that makes it easier for me to see what I want because my eyes can't really track that fast. Let's go down to medium. And I don't want that. I want to genuinely find the truth here and not be an elitist asshole online and be like, ugh, I only use the finest Kemper output. I record using the headphone output of my Kemper. Like, I don't want to be that guy. I just want whatever's literally, actually, in reality, the best. So, although I do like the idea of only recording out of the headphone output. I think that produces the finest recordings with my $65,000 converters, doesn't it? I don't know what accent that is. It's somewhere between, I don't know. Anyways. Again, with the high-end extension of the headphone output, very interesting. Probably the most notable find of the whole time. There's some weird crap going on, like at 20 to 10 hertz on the monitor output for some reason. It's not like that's audible, you know? So, I mean, maybe audible, but it's not, my speakers aren't producing that. There's a little bit of discrepancy. I'll set this to freeze, see if it'll freeze both. That would be cool. Yeah. Here we go. I wish it didn't do that last minute. I hit the space bar and so it decides to add whatever it does, because you could see what the differences were. There's a difference in the low end here. And granted, don't get me wrong, in terms of an EQ, like a frequency analysis chart, this is absolutely meaningless. But this isn't about EQ. This is about looking at readouts in order to verify what our ears are telling us. And my ears are telling me that between the headphone out and the monitor out, or the main out and the monitor out, that there are differences in the way I don't think it's processing behaves. I think it's the translation. Maybe it's the conversion, if that's taking place, depending on the different output. But there are differences in the way that it is audibly being presented to me. Okay, we'll say it that way. And I mean, I could mute this and talk over it and let it play, and we could look at them. Let's go ahead and unfreeze. So you can see there's very slight differences up here, up north. There's quite a large difference here. Is that going to matter? I don't know. And then we've got slight differences here in the low end. Most of all in the middle, there's nothing to even report. You know, in terms of a frequency analyzer, but in terms of audibility, what my ears can perceive, let's do our trusty loaded in the playlist thing so it's easier. Let's go to my bad. Monitor output. We'll move this up here. And I'll load that in there so we can switch back and forth easily. Let me choose a part like I did before with some palm mutes. I'm not hearing anything this time. Okay. Just not hearing a difference whatsoever. Let's find that spot or one like it again. And let's bring in the direct output. Let's really get weird. Let's test myself again. Am I just hearing what I want to hear? And granted, is any of this enough to cause problems? So far, the only one that I felt like was enough to make a difference was the Spitif, because I keep getting clicks and pops. That totally crosses it off for me. I'd love to know what the problem is and get to the bottom of it, because it sucks. And then the second would presumably be the monitor, but I'm going to test that one more time for myself. I'm going to find a little cleaner loop. I had the perfect loop before. And it's also possible my ears could be getting fatigued, because I'm having a much harder time picking it out now. And I was moused over it, so one more time, let's do the confusion test. I'll make sure that I'm on it, okay? And then don't know what I'm hearing. I think that's the direct out. It's a bass thing, and like, it's not just about the EQ, it's about the way that it sounds as you're playing and the reactivity, because it's like, that's the type of thing that will, while subtle, it's like if you're playing it and you feel like, something's different, like, I have to listen this closely to finally discern and figure out what is different. But that doesn't take away from the fact that many, many people already find there to be something different, regardless of me, spending a combined 2 hours, plus however long I've spent behind the scenes messing with this, to verify that there is in fact something that is different. And it's an issue, like I've said like 6,000 times in the video, just because I repeat myself a lot. It's an issue with like dynamic range or transient response or something like that, where the direct out just has a little more realism than the monitor output does. It's difficult for me to tell a difference between any of the other two, especially the main out and the headphone out. I could not tell a difference, as far as I remember, between those two. I'm willing to bet that there is a negligible, certainly no sort of perceived difference between the headphone, the direct, and the main out. So that's good news. I think the headphone out is a very viable output to use for recording. I'm wondering if there are ways to... There's two things I'm thinking. Something I like to do in Pro Tools is, when mixing, when using reverbs, not LCR, stereo aux input, when mixing with reverbs, I like to create my reverb. Bear with me. Vintage verb. When I send something to a reverb, I like to be able to control where it is entering into that reverb. It gives it more space, and so I can send this to reverb, and the way that one does that is with this button, which is link panner to main, which just means that if I decide that my guitar is going to be panned over a little bit, it follows that on the send to the reverb. So It then sounds like the guitar is, if you're watching, like here-ish, right? In the room, and I can further illustrate this if I set it to pre-fader and then mute it. Like I could be like, oh, where is that guitar player in that room? And I can dramatize the effect as well. He's over there. Yeah, he's over here, right? He's on the left side of that room. That's one complaint I have about the Kemper, is that you've got these beautiful, magnificent stereo effects, and it assumes that you want the guitar player to be in the center, and I don't most of the time. If anything, I really don't. I'm going to want them to be on the left or the right side. And I get it. It's not like that's going to matter live, but when I've got a rack mountable version of something like this, I don't know. Look, I can't be too hard on something that I love so much. This is really nitpicky, I get. But I would use the built-in delays and reverbs a lot more if I had the ability to change where the source was coming into them from. And as far as I know, you don't, which is a bummer. And I don't know, were there great records made without that effect? Probably. It's just a preference of mine. So, I find myself skeptical that it's difficult because I really like using the very like effect like, let's say more like cinematic or just extreme, I guess, delays and reverbs on the Kemper. They're really great, and you can do some really, really cool stuff with it. But in terms of like setting a guitar player in a room and building a mix and everything, I'm probably not going to end up using those reverbs because I tend to feel like there's a lack of actual space happening. So I'll probably stick to using my sends on Pro Tools. So where I was going with that is that the way that I will likely use this going forward, I'm always gonna want a dry amp out of the Kemper. I don't usually take a DI out because I'm like, meh, I don't really get into reamping. I'm never happy with the results, and it's like most of the time I wish I just would have done it better at the beginning, and a lot of it is an issue with the performance and not the specific amp tone I chose most of the time. So I don't tend to take a DI out unless somebody asks me to do that to send it to them. So, and also, for a long time, I was recording main out, main left as my stack, and then using the SPDIF as the wet delay reverb. And like I said, I would run into intermittent clicks and pops like we heard today, and that was a problem. And then also, like, why do I need a left and right stack when it just reduces to mono? Like, what's the point of that? So I'm just recording a mono stack these days with stereo effects if needed. So what I've been doing is direct out with the stack and then a wet with the main outs left and right, and it's probably what I'm going to keep doing. In the case of modulation, I just say, like, as a mostly, well, as a guitar player, I would say, and as a guy that grew up playing all analog stuff anyways, just put the damn modulation on the guitar tone, like put it going into the amp, so to speak. So in other words, I'll just set the stack to mod instead. If you have a stereo effect, though, that can be an issue, and then I'm not sure what to tell you with that setup. Yeah, like a stereo chorus or something like that. Hard to say. I'd have to experiment because I certainly wouldn't want to do like direct out, monitor out. I mean, you could. There's not that big of a difference, to be honest. There's not that big of a difference. I think that's the conclusion of all of this, is there's not that big of a difference, and that's why it's remained like kind of shrouded in mystery for me anyways, is because I haven't seen anybody else really genuinely talk about this stuff. People will be like, "Oh, my headphone out sounds great," and the other ones sound like trash. And I'm like, I don't know. I think it's not the head. I don't think it's the outputs in that case. Like I think you're being a little bit extreme. But the only one I was really truly able to hear a difference on was that monitor output. And even then, it is like hard to tell the difference. I just felt like there was in the past, and then as I've gone in here and tested and really, really, like you can see the look on my face, uh, listened intently, I'm like, I think there is a difference. If I really listen closely, I can pick out the difference here. And it's almost easier to tell the difference when you're playing. It tends to sound muddier and just less lifelike. So I'm going to wrap things up because this is a ridiculously long video. May God shine his blessings upon you if you actually watched the whole video. Other than that, I hope you got some value out of this deep dive. I really wanted to see if there were differences and to put a lot of this stuff to rest, and see what was going to be best for me moving forward. I'd say, like I said, my biggest complaints are that I can't set the guitar in the stereo field for the reverbs and stuff like that in this. Or, for example, I just want a pan knob for the space effect, for the room effect. I'd love a pan knob for that. If I had that, I don't know. Then I'd have to print stuff that way. Would I use it? I don't know. Maybe. It might force you into making decisions that would lead to better recordings, which would be cool. And other than that, if you've got a feeling or an instinct about something, step one, don't jam it down other people's throats. You're not sure. You don't know. Step two, internally go with it and believe it. This could go with danger. This could go with disrespect. This could go with somewhat of a weird feeling you've got about some gear you're playing. Go with it. And then step three, definitely try to test it when you've got some free time and find out if what you thought and what you were believing really was true. In the sense of danger, just believe it and leave and get out of there and be safe. But I mean, in a case like this, or in a case of a belief you have about something, internally go with it for sure. But keep in mind that before you speak about it to others, you need to make sure that you test those really vigorously to the best of your ability, especially before you go trying to tell other people that those things are true, because you don't know until you really follow things to the end of their logical conclusions. So, with all that being said, thank you. Like I said, if you made it through a video like this, you must really love me. And if that's the case, consider subscribing to my Patreon. It's just $3 a month at the time that I'm recording this. And it just helps me to keep doing stuff like this and making art and keeping my lights on, which is very, very appreciated. I think that's it. I really hope you got something out of this. Maybe you watched it over the course of a couple days, or you were cleaning your dishes or something. And if that's the case, good on you. And I will see you next time. Thanks.